We are in Lucky Part 13 talking about Jesus, early Christianity, and all the like. So with this, as always, this series is under 5 minutes of video, and you can push the times too if you want to have it go a little faster. What is Jesus? Who is Jesus? I mean, if you were to tell me the demographics, like, what would you say Jesus was? Would you tell me that he was a Jewish man? Would you say Second Temple Judean? Would you say he was a Pharisee? Would you say he was a rabbi? Would you say he was a rebel? What kind of things would you describe him with? Would you say he was a magic man? Would you say that he was a necromancer? Would you say that he was a mystic or a magi? Would you say that he was a prophet? Would you say he was a holy man? Would you say that he was a rebel rouser and revolutionary? Would you say that he was maybe a feminist, that he uplifted women and he uplifted children and the most vulnerable of society? Would you say that he was the Jewish Messiah, only for the Jewish people? Would you say he was the Messiah for everyone, only those who accept him? Perhaps he was the Messiah for everyone, and through his death all would be saved. What do you think he was? See, I ask this question because fundamentally what people say Jesus is says more about them a lot of the times than it does about Jesus. Much like the use of the Bible itself, talking about Jesus fundamentally projects something onto Jesus that you need Jesus to be. Because Jesus has become the ultimate litmus test, much like looking at the Bible itself. What you pull from it says more about you than it does about the Bible. What you put onto Jesus says more about you than it does about Jesus. Because we can look at historical context and we can say Jesus was a Second Temple Judean and was likely part of the Pharisee himself, that he had these aspects about him that lend itself to believe that we could say he was that. But fundamentally, the most basic line of the Christian church has tried to remove his Jewish nature from him because, well, that was supposedly a weird little quirk of his, you know, the idea that they had the God and they had the Son of God that were the true church. And yet, oh, the Jewishness, no, we just took those texts and we just etch-a-sketched the entire contextual understanding of all of them so that they point to Jesus. And we etch-a-sketched the entire context of the man's life and all of the things he said, and we said, no, it makes sense perfectly in a Roman context. Oh, and beyond that, even up to today, people who claim they can read the translations of translations in the modern English and believe that the Bible is not only perfect, but perfectly understandable in plain English. Yes, of course. That makes perfect sense, right? Here's the thing. When we look at the understanding of Jesus, Jesus has become a very functional projector screen. He has become a very functional projector screen that fundamentally says that this is more about the person projecting onto him than what he was himself. Even in the scriptures, Jesus asks, "Who do you say I am?" And most say, well, the answer would be proper to say he is the Messiah and that he was just trying to test people. But I do wonder more often than not how much this is a test of who you are in what you see in Jesus, in what you are willing to attribute to the man, what you are willing to deny in the man, what you are willing to make of the man, and of the book that you claim is inspired by his story. Because fundamentally what you take from the Bible and what you bring into these spaces of worship fundamentally ends up reflecting more on you. Because one of the ways that Jesus became such a catchy sort of hopeful narrative for people is that Jesus fundamentally was whatever people wanted him to be. Jesus was able to be divine masculinity in a way that was human and relatable and interesting, but fundamentally fit with the norms of society enough, or played with the hopes of society enough, that they were willing to take him on and see him and put their feelings and hopes onto him, their dreams onto him, and sometimes their fantasies onto him as a means of connecting to this image of divinity. And so it is intriguing to me because I still believe far more often that to see what someone thinks of Jesus and to see what someone pulls from the Bible says far more about them than it ever does about the man himself or the book itself.